And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. The winters here are incredible. I recommend them to anybody. Right here on the Put on Raiders podcast, RTPOW podcast is my Twitter handle, and James is RHLOLM22 on Twitter. See those breakdowns that we have. He's so famous for. I had a play that I really loved this week. As far as what the Raiders are doing offensively, a lot of just really cool stuff from Greg Olsen. As we can see, 858-299 is our 858-299-5592 is our text line. So definitely check us out there. Thanks for everybody listening in Carlsbad, California, Atlanta, Georgia, Cincinnati, Ohio, Denver, Colorado, and Los Angeles, California are all listening and watching all of the Put on Raiders podcast. We have a guest today, Matt Holder, the man with the special teams last name, here to join us. Here. You can reach him at mholder95, part of that Silver and Black Pride group over there. Matt, how you doing today?
Pretty good, man. How you guys doing? Appreciate you guys having me on.
No problem. Let's start off with a move the Raiders made today. I mean, with the way Zay Jones is doing kind of a jack of all trades, not a big deal that the Raiders let go of Willie Snead, right?
Yeah, I mean, not at all. I think with Willie Snead, I mean, I feel like he had almost more drop passes than catches this year. So I don't think it's going to be too much of a big deal. But I'm excited to see what they end up doing. I feel like guy I can't remember if it's PJ or DJ Turner. DJ Turner. Yeah, I'm excited to see if I think they'll bring him up. So I'm excited to see what he can do because he can add some value in the return game too, which obviously with like 38-year-old Willie Snead, not really an option for him anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, I am, and as you know, DJ Turner is my guy. So
Gotcha. Good to know.
I'd be happy to see him come up. I think in the preseason he showed a little wiggle. I like that. And also definitely. The return game, I think there is some opportunity in the return game there, and I'd rather get Hunter. Hunter is on offensive team status as far as I'm concerned. He's too vital to what the Raiders want to do offensively. The Raiders have been in the news as they always are, and they were in the news again today with Mark Davis. It's just like, if you cover the Raiders, you never have a board moment. But we're going to stay on the field on this podcast. The Raiders have changed dramatically from when we go from Olsen to Gruden's play calling. What are your takeaways and what are the biggest things you kind of like as far as that goes with the Raiders, the way they've been two back-to-back games where the games were over in the third quarter, and there's they're doing a lot of fun things here offensively.
Yeah, I mean, 2 games, I believe they're 2 highest scoring outings of the year, right? 2 back-to-back 34-point game or 33 with one with the missed PAT. But I think one of the biggest things that I've liked, and I think I tweeted this out earlier, is the play action percentage has gone from literally the lowest and the worst in the NFL and to at least above average level. And this last week was actually really high. I think they had like 33%, which, I believe was like top 8, top 10 in the NFL, something like that. So that's, I think, been the biggest takeaways. They're getting a little bit more of those easier throws, helping out that offensive line that's been struggling in pass protection so far, and not asking them to kind of sit back and pass block while they just try and heave up 10 bombs a game or whatever rate they were going. And like, especially in this last game, you saw Derek Carr only had 2 deep attempts, but he hit both of them and was just efficient down the field and took what the defense was giving him. And I think that's one of the biggest differences that I felt has made the difference in the last 2 weeks that I've really liked seeing with Olsen. And I think the other thing too is they've gotten the running backs involved in the passing game a lot more. It was frustrating for me because you heard Gruden all offseason talk about the Kenyon Drake signing and justifying it as, we're going to put him at receiver, or we're going to put him at slot. Sometimes we're going to give him the ball in the passing game. And I feel like he had maybe a handful of targets, maybe 10 targets in the first 4 games or first 5 games of the season. And then all of a sudden he comes out in Denver. And I was actually at the game talking to my buddy, who's unfortunately a Broncos fan, and saying like, yeah, the Raiders have had Kenyon Drake and haven't used him. And I think 2 plays later, Kenyon Drake scores his first touchdown of the year. So that let you know how great I am at predicting things. So, but yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest things is using that play action, getting the running backs involved in the passing game, especially in the screen game. I think the Broncos game was the first time I saw Josh Jacobs catch a screen all year. So
yeah,
it was those are the two biggest takeaways for me, the things that I've loved the most.
Yeah, it was almost like slow motion. It was that play was developing, and you were like, "Oh, is this the Raiders? Is this the Raiders actually running a screen pass?" It was like kind of nuts to kind of see. No, the offensive line, no sacks in the last 6 quarters. They seemed. I'm seeing, the screen pass that I kind of had not really breakdown, but just kind of show on the all 22 where everybody's in unison on that screen pass to Hunter Renfro. They seem to be blocking. I'm seeing Andre James, the snaps look a little bit better, and also you're seeing him be able to get to the second level as well. What are your thoughts about the offensive line? They seem like they're coming together at the right time here.
Yeah, I think kind of like what I was talking about too. I think the schemes definitely help him out, and I think like you talk about, Andre James is coming off his best game of the year by far his best outing of his career, really, which obviously is only a handful of games, but that's even more impressive when you consider going against Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, who have been obviously Cox has been one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL in the last few years, and Hargrave has been an absolute stud for the Eagles this year. I think the move to guard has done Alex Leatherwood a lot of good, especially as a run blocker. I think he's able to use his athleticism a little bit more and kind of start to move people. I think he still has some work to do in pass pro. His first game at guard I thought was a lot better. His last one, he struggled a little bit against Cox. Nothing too terrible, like you said. Didn't give up any sacks or anything like that, but not exactly what you're hoping for. I do still feel like they need to find somewhere else at right tackle. As much as Brandon Parker has done his job, I guess if you say, where again not giving up any sacks, I kind of feel like if we're talking about the trade deadline, that's Tuesday, that might be something that they end up exploring, but. For the most part, I thought, again, kind of the theme of the year, the last 2 weeks, everything's been a lot improved. Colton Miller's obviously been a stud just about all year. And then John Simpson, I thought, was coming off his best game of his career too. So a lot of good things, a lot of momentum heading into the bye, especially with that young offensive line and Richie Incognito maybe coming back, which could help out some as well. So
yeah, no question about it. And later on our show, we're gonna do a full do our rookie report. What's your rookie report here as far as like some of these rookies? I mean, I know people are just you can't say enough about what Nate Hobbs is doing, but what are your thoughts about how some of these rookies and how's the draft class shaping out?
I think we'll start with the first round pick, Alex Leatherwood. I'm gonna give him a hold right now. I think if I had to give it right now, it probably wouldn't be pretty good. Probably wouldn't be a high grade at all, but I think with the position change, I'm interested to see a little bit more. So I'll give him kind of an incomplete for now. If we're going to evaluate him on a tackle, it's going to be not a pretty one, but I think Trevon Merrick, I think he's shown some flashes, had some pretty good games. I definitely give him, in that B category where he stood out a few times, kind of has fallen by the wayside. And then obviously with Nate Hobbs, he's stepped up and surprised. I mean, just about everybody in the football world outside of that building in Las Vegas, because I don't think he was on anybody's radar. Jim Nagy at the Senior Bowl was talking about how they liked him and didn't even invite him to the Senior Bowl just because no other team was really high on him. And he's obviously, you get a starter out of your 5th round pick. That's huge. And then let's see, trying to think of who else we got on the rookie side of things.
I mean, Kuntz is
an incomplete.
Yeah, Kuntz is incomplete. I'd probably say Diablo is probably about the same too. I was going to say, I feel like those are the 3 guys that have really played. So glad And then obviously Morrissey is no longer with the team. So
no question about that. So before I hand it over to Ryan, biggest surprise and biggest disappointment going into this bye week.
I'd say the biggest surprise for me is going to be Jonathan Abram. He was a guy that I wasn't very high on coming out of the draft. Then the last year, I thought he really struggled at safety. Ended up kind of being a defensive liability at times last year. And then this year, I think he's played in the box more, played a little bit more linebacker. Now that Merrick's back there to play the free safety spot, and it's done the wonders. Now I think he's honestly an impact player on this defense. A guy that he's always kind of had that mentality of flying around and see ball, hit ball, and that great aggressiveness. And they talked about in the offseason him kind of toning it down a little bit, personality wise and on the field, just kind of coming back. And I think that's done wonders. I mean, he's picked his spot so much better. He's not missing tackles all the time, going for the big hit. And when he does have those opportunities, he's still taking them, as we all know, and forcing some good incompletions at the catch point and everything, making some big tackles. Biggest disappointment. Well, if it weren't for the last 2 weeks, I would have said Foster Moreau, but he's played like stud the last two. So I guess I'll stick with kind of Alex Leatherwood. Not that I had terribly high expectations for him coming in. I viewed him as more like a second, third round guy, like a lot of people that feel how he was overdrafted. But I was kind of hoping he'd be a little bit better than what he was. I didn't think he'd be, moved to guard 5 games into the season. Again, plenty of time for him to turn it around, new position. Maybe that's ended up being the better fit for him. And he's just a guy that, Raiders draft history in recent years got a bunch of solid players, but maybe overdrafted a little bit, which obviously isn't his fault. But I would probably put him in my my biggest disappointment category if we had to pick it now. But that's a tough one. There's not a whole lot of guys that are in that category with the 5-2 record so far this year.
No, definitely. And I wanted to touch base back on Greg Olsen. I think, and I saw the stat today. I couldn't believe it when I saw it, but the Raiders and EPA expected points added via the pass were 17th in the league under John Gruden. They're number 1 over the last 2 weeks. With Greg Olsen. And then offensively, they've jumped from 24th, if you count the running game as well, all the way to 3rd. So clearly, Olsen's making some changes. He's putting guys in position to succeed, changing it up. We saw wide receiver screens. We saw running back screens back-to-back weeks. Do you think it's just him simplifying the playbook, or what changes do you see from Olsen's office that you didn't see over the last 3+ years with John Gruden?
I think one of the biggest things is I feel like there's more creativity, to kind of speaking to what you're talking about a little bit. I was talking with this on Tape Don't Lie after the game last week. I felt like with John Gruden, we got like probably one, not necessarily trick play, but kind of like gadget play that you kind of like a variation off of like a zone run concept where, they just do something more unique that the defenses might not, to try and catch a defense off guard. And with Greg Olsen, I feel like we're getting more like 3, 4, maybe even 5 plays of those a game where you're just seeing more creativity. And again, that's something that sticks in the back of the defense's mind. Is something that they have to prepare for and always kind of keep remembering throughout the game. And then as far as, game planning in the future, that's something that defenses have to prepare for during the practice week too. So that's always a good thing. And I honestly think too, Derek Carr being able to have a little bit more control over the offense, being a little bit more comfortable just from him, just in a mindset standpoint of, when you're the one calling the shots, you get to pick what plays you like to run, and you feel a little bit more comfortable, play with a little more swagger, which the last few weeks I felt like, or the few weeks before, the last few weeks of Gruden, I should say, felt like he was put a little bit more unsure of himself, kind of regressed a little bit. And then last 2 weeks taking command of the offense. But I think one of the biggest things for me is when we get to the Gruden era, or towards the end of it, it's funny. We always wanted the Raiders to air it out and chuck it out deep. And then the last few games, they were chucking it deep almost too much and had to come back. Right. Fans can never be happy. We got to make sure keep the coaches on their toes and all that. And I thought that was kind of getting to a level where it was just getting unsustainable, and they were getting lucky in the beginning of the game, hitting at a high rate. And then that kind of came back down to earth. Whereas, like I was talking about before, against the Eagles, they pick and choose their spots. They go deep twice and they hit on both of them. Derek Carr, breaks in or finishes second in the completion percentage. So I think that's the biggest thing is they're getting more rhythm throws and getting more and taking their chances when the defense lets them instead of trying to force it. Where I felt like the last few weeks with Gruden.
Oh, definitely. And I see some variation in the run game. Obviously, the wham lead is back in the playbook. Haven't seen that from Gruden. Running a little bit more power, more play action, as you mentioned. The biggest thing for me is I see he's lining Ruggs up, on the single side instead of as part of the bunch or in the slot. So you're seeing him work one-on-one. They ran a slant to Henry Ruggs. Finally, it took 20 games.
Yeah.
They finally ran the slant to him, and you just see him putting guys in position to make plays. And to me, I thought it was interesting. The Eagles decided we're going to play this, cover 4 quarters coverage, and we're going to take away the deep balls. And Darren Waller wasn't playing. Yeah. And Derek Carr has no problem throwing the ball, short to intermediate and just picking you apart, which he did. So, and they never adjusted. So that was kind of interesting to see that. But I read your article today on Silver and Black Pride about the trade deadline. And I want to touch on that. You listed 7 potential guys.
One of the crazy on there.
Yeah, plus or minus reasons for, reasons against. Yeah. Money aside, out of the 7 that you listed, which guy would you think's the best fit? Do you think the Raiders should go after?
The guy that I loved, but I don't think it's going to work, partially because of what I listed in the article. Just contract's a little bit complicated, and I think he loves Philly a lot, and that would be Jason Kelce. just because, you know, we were talking about Andre James having I know, I'm making Dwayne over there upset, but
that's my guy. I wanted him.
He wants Kelsey too.
You want Kelsey too? Gotcha.
No. I was texting during the game. I was like, just leave Kelsey when you leave the stadium.
Yeah, there you go. We'll take Kelsey, and we'll take, if they want to drop Fletcher Cox off too, we'll take that too. But yeah, I mean, Jason Kelsey would kind of be the guy that, when I look at this Raiders offensive line, I know we were talking about Andre James having a great game last week, but the previous 6 were pretty ugly. And, you know, I'd love for him to be able to figure it out and be able to, you know, work through his kinks, but it's just so tough for me to think about that when it's like, all right, but this is a playoff team. This is a team that doesn't need to wait. This isn't Colton Miller's rookie year when the Raiders were 4-12 and their first win came against Baker Mayfield's first start against the Browns in overtime. And if you remember it, they won on a controversial call in that game. So that's kind of where, yeah, you're there. I was too. So good to know. Yeah. So it was, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, if you can get a guy like Kelsey who is going to help you in the ground game. I think he struggled a little bit in pass protection, lost a little step. He's not what he used to be. He's not the best center in the league anymore, but he will be a dominant run blocker. What do the Raiders struggle at? Running the ball. And part of that is because of Andre James. So I would love to see that happen. It's also tough to, I think, to make changes at the offensive line mid-season, just because that is a position group that needs continuity. So that would, I think, is another barrier to the trade and a lot of the other guys. But that would be my guy that I'd love to have in there. But I'm not holding my breath to see that happen, but we'll see what happens in these next few days.
Yeah, after looking at the all-22, I thought James played okay. His best game of the year. I'm not all in after one game. They didn't put a zero technique over him. Every team before did, and he really struggled. So he didn't have a guy lined up over him, and he was literally just double teaming, working at the second level, which he can do. He still missed some blocks, but I still think, you know, the better defenses are going to do that and take him away, and he really struggles. I lean the other way. I think Justin Britt, Houston's giving guys away. I think they handed Mark Ingram away, and Justin Britt was a Tom Cable guy. He drafted him. He's played center. He's played right tackle. I think you could probably get him for a conditional 7th. Houston, like I said, has mailed it in at this point. So yeah, I think center too. It's kind of where I go. Nick Martin got some run last week, and it was kind of just fair. He missed a couple blocks. He was in for 5 plays. I went back and studied those. Wasn't great. But on the other side, I see a lot of Raider fans that are, hey, trade Farrell, trade Arnett. Like, honestly, what do you think they could get for Cleveland Farrell right now?
Yeah, I get that. I get that question a lot. And I mean, I don't think you can, we're talking about a 6th or a 7th round pick, honestly. And I think part of it is the Raiders have killed his trade value in the last few weeks. I mean, week 1, he was a healthy scratch. How are you going to negotiate that this guy is going to be a standout player on some other team when you're not even using him? And I mean, obviously he's kind of got that label attached to him that's of the bus label and the stuff that's not going to help in any negotiations. And I mean, if you're another team, like if you're sitting there thinking, like, I don't know many teams that are Super Bowl contenders or playoff contenders that are Cleveland Farrell away, you know? And I mean, if you're another team, like, and you want Cleveland Farrell, you're interested in him. Well, I would just play chicken with the Raiders and see if they're going to release him. Cause at the end of the day, like, he's going to be on his last year of his deal. I could see them cutting him, especially if they want to develop Malcolm Coots. Because right now, if they're not going to use Cleveland Farrell, I mean, I don't understand why you don't give Malcolm Coots some more reps if you're going to say he's going to be your future. So I don't see them getting much in for Cleveland Farrell other than like maybe a 6th round pick. I think if you can get a 5th, maybe you do that. But if you're going to if we're talking about a 6th or 7th round pick, I'd almost rather see them just keep Cleveland and keep them in the defensive line rotation and just be an expensive 4th defensive end. But yeah,
I'm with you. I don't think they're going to trade him. I don't think he has a market. And just looking at the numbers, they would take a $1.86 million cap hit just to trade him. Yeah. And they're tied against the cap anyways. To me, he has a role in this team. It's 10 to 15 snaps a game on 1st and 2nd down, giving guys a breather and just getting in there. And then I hear the same thing about Arnett, but again, I'm under the assumption, like, you have him on a fairly decent contract. You have him for another 2 years before you have to make a decision. Just try to develop him once he's healthy. You're really not getting any value. I think Arnett at this point is in the same boat. I think you'd be lucky to get a 6th, and you're probably looking at a 7th for him because he's just not healthy. He hasn't played.
Yeah, another guy where it's hard to negotiate when you've replaced him already. And I mean, I'm kind of with you on keeping Arnett. I mean, like you said, he got 3 years if you count this one on left on his deal, and as much as I think they will bring Casey Hayward back, there's no guarantee at this point. He is still on a 1-year deal. You never know what can happen in free agency. So I don't think you want to be all of a sudden sitting here in March and all of a sudden you're looking for a corner in the draft and going to have to rely on a rookie next year. So yeah, I think both guys are here to stay.
I do like that you threw 2 defensive tackles in your article. Now, to me, it's tough because I want the Raiders to stop the run better, but I don't want to lose snaps for Thomas and Jefferson and those guys. But they could use another big body because if something happens to Hankins, which they got through one game without him, I think if he was to miss extended time, it would really hurt the defense. But between the 2 guys, I think you listed it as Tim Settle and Andrew Billings. Maybe those are the 2 guys.
Yeah.
Which one do you think they could get cheaper, and which one do you think would be a better fit for them?
I think Billings, they could definitely get cheaper and would probably be a better fit for what they need. Settle is a guy who, I mean, he's Settle's 6'4", 330. Like that guy should be plugging up gaps in the middle, but he hasn't quite been that in the NFL. Now, part of that, maybe he's not getting as many snaps, so he hasn't had as many opportunities because Washington's defensive line is stacked top to bottom. That's why he's on the trade block. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and he's just been buried on their depth chart, which there's no shame in that, especially at defensive tackle with Jonathan Allen. And I think even Matt Ioannidis for them is taking a back seat to Daron Payne this year. So I would like him as like kind of a future prospect because I think he's only like 25 years old too. And he's a better pass rusher. He will offer something as a pass rusher, so he'd be a little bit more of a natural transition into the scheme. But I think Andrew Billings would probably be better for what they need in that guy, like we're talking about, to give Jonathan Hankins a blow, take some of the pressure off him. Because I was with you when Jonathan Hankins was out against the Broncos. That was part of the reason why I picked the Broncos to win that game. Is they have a good rushing attack, and that's the Raiders' best run defender. Maybe Denzel Perryman is right behind him, or Perryman is right ahead of him, but that guy is key to their defensive line, and I think you can work Billings into the rotation on first and second down, but he's going to give you nothing as a pass rush. And he's kind of in a similar situation in Cleveland where he's just gotten buried on the depth chart. If you go look at his stats, you'll see, I think he has 1 tackle in the year. I thought that was kind of funny when I was looking that up. He's been a healthy scratch in the past too, but again, Cleveland's had a really good defensive line play this year, especially a defensive tackle. Malik McDowell's turned his career with him around with them. And I believe, I always forget to say Malik Jackson has played really well for them too. So that's kind of where he's at. 2 guys that are just kind of buried on the depth chart and behind really good players that I think can definitely help them out. But yeah, I think Billings would probably be the best solution for this year, but I would love to get, I'm already drawing a blank on his name. Subtle. Thank you. Subtle. Not that I wrote the article on it or anything, right? But I'd love to get Settle just to have him in there because I do think he can impact the team this year, but he would also have some prospects as a guy that they can keep for the future because I believe all the defensive tackles on their roster right now are free agents going to be in the offseason. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just look at it and I think stopping the run, they're going to have to do it at some point this year. And I'm just looking at the schedule and looking at the cold weather games. They go at Cleveland. Indianapolis is indoors, but they're going to want to run the ball at Kansas City late in the season, depending on the weather. So at some point they're going to have to stop the run. And I think that's why Farrell still has value and why he's going to be on this team.
Definitely.
But yeah, they definitely, I was hoping Niles Scott was on the practice squad. I went and looked at it in the Broncos game. I'm like, oh man, he's not there. Like they don't have a big body guy to do that. But let's just hope Jonathan Hankins stays healthy and that's not an issue going down the stretch. But for sure. We'll see. Yeah. Luckily, Buffalo doesn't want to run the ball if the Raiders end up having to play at Buffalo in the playoffs or something like that.
Luckily, yeah. Best case scenario.
Get a big lead and get Hankins off the field. That's the best way you can do it. Real quick before you go, just second half concerns because we have been in this car before. As far as that goes, and is the AFC West pretty much shaping up? And I give Lincoln Kennedy credit because he said even before when the season went after the first couple of games, he said, let's not give Kansas City the division just yet. And he was the only person who I heard say that. What are your thoughts about the AFC West and how it's shaping up, and then the concerns you have for the second half?
I think the concerns for the second half is going to be kind of the same that's kind of been all season, which is going to be the ground game on both sides of the ball. Like we were just talking about, going to have to eventually at some point, the Raiders are going to have to stop the run, especially when they go play a team like Cleveland, who likes to run the ball as a run first team and is going to be up there in the playoff conversation and maybe even competing with the Raiders for at least seeding, if not a playoff spot. And I think that's going to be huge. And obviously the game against Indy as well. And, as far as pass protection goes, I guess like we were talking about before, I think the scheme has helped out, and I think the offensive line has played better, but they need to keep playing up because the scheme can only hold up for so long. At some point, the Raiders are going to have to sit back and drop back and pass and pass protect. At some point, they're going to have to face a team that's going to force them to do that. And obviously that's got to step up. So it's going to be kind of in the trenches. And then as far as, avoiding the disaster of the last few years, I mean, that's where I feel like Derek Carr's leadership's got to step in. He stepped up and had done a great job, especially navigating through all the garbage that's been around the last week. But I think it's going to be a lot on him to kind of keep especially a young team focused, which the Raiders obviously struggled to do. And then as far as the AFC West goes, I mean, yeah, like it's wide open right now. Obviously, with the Chiefs kind of reigning dominance over the last few years, and I feel like a lot of times at this point in the season, it can kind of get deflating when you're looking up at them and they're undefeated, look unstoppable. But that's obviously not the case this year. I think right now the Chiefs, if you're the Chiefs, if you're a Chiefs fan or Chiefs writer or whatnot, you're thinking about just making a wild card at this point. That's kind of your where your eyes are set right now. Not worrying about the division, just trying to get in the dance. And that's huge for the Raiders. It's huge for the team like the Raiders and the Chargers. It's wide open. I think it'll come down to whoever ends up playing better defense, because that seems to be the biggest problem in the division across the board right now. Raiders have obviously stepped up. Chiefs are really bad on defense. Chargers have their moments, but so I think whoever's defense can end up figuring out, stepping up and end up being in that elite category. I think it'll be a fun clash between those three teams, and definitely one I think the entire world's going to be tuning into. So nice to have the division open for once, right?
Yes, very much, very, very much so. So the Raiders need to be 6-2 going into that Sunday night. That could be that's the game where you gotta, you have an opportunity to slay the dragon there, and really put the knife in the Chiefs there. And as long as Mahomes still trying to go deep, no matter what the defense is, and won't take the underneath stuff. Let's hope that continues. Because that's one of the biggest issues he's having right now. He just won't be patient and do that.
Yeah, he's playing hero ball. So the Raiders definitely need to take advantage, get some of those turnovers that he's been handing out. So
no question about it. Matt Holder, Silver and Black Pride. I appreciate the time on our show, and we'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, take care.
Thanks, Matt. Raider fans, thanks again for listening to the Put on Raiders podcast. But please be sure to subscribe and leave comments. We'd love to answer the comments in the future. But keep those clicks, keep watching, and we're here for you to break down all Raiders content.